presented by President Donald Trump, gestures into the crowd after a campaign rally at the Crown Expo in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on Monday, Sept. 9. Evan Vucci, app photo driving the day. What you need to know. Tonight, Republican Dan Bishop and Democrat Dan McCready will finally face off in North Carolina's 9th congressional district. Nearly $20 million has been spent on this race. McCready has spent $4.7 million, Bishop has spent $1.7 million, and the NRCC and CLF have spent a combined $5.4 million. All the groups involved in this race say the same thing. Internal polling has the two candidates within a few points of each other, all within the margin of error. As you know by now, this district went for President Donald Trump by a dozen points. Democrats don't have much business holding this seat. From Old North state politics, the last time a Democrat held the seat was up to 1962, when Hugh Quincy Alexander lost his re-election bid to Republican Jim Broyle in that year's midterm. Republicans have held the different configurations of this district since 1963. Old North state politics post: whatever happens tonight, whoever wins this race, there's going to be a lot of spin. So we wanted to decode what you'll hear tomorrow. Today, if Bishop wins, Republicans are going to gloat that they were able to beat a candidate, McCready, the Democrat, who was running for Congress for more than 2 years and who spent $4 million. They can say that Trump districts aren't, in fact, crumbling, like Democrats say they are. Of course, this is true, but not the whole story. The Republican congressional coalition was once built off seats like this, suburbs and exurbs, and if Democrats keep it close, it could highlight some of the GOP's enduring problem in traditional strongholds. The good for the GOP: if Bishop wins, it would show that the NRCC and CLF, who were almost sworn enemies last cycle, have learned to take cues from one another and win races. McCready was once beating Bishop by a sizable margin. If McCready wins, if Democrats win a seat that Trump won by a dozen points just 3 years ago, Republicans could be in trouble, and no amount of spin will be able to cover that up. This isn't a modestly red seat, it's a solidly red seat. Combine an embarrassing loss with countless Republicans jumping ship for retirement, and that's a troubling picture for the House GOP in 2020. Republicans are already complaining about Bishop. They say he was a bad candidate with the baggage of the notorious bathroom bill in the North Carolina legislature. Of course, this is one race in one district in America. Remember, Republicans lost a whole ton of specials in 2009, and then won the majority, but narratives matter in politics, and one race can be indicative of future trends. Trump's closing line, delivered in Fayetteville, North Carolina: tomorrow is your chance to send a clear message to the America-hating left. More from Steve Shepard and Anita Kumar. First in Playbook, Paul Ryan is joining the American Enterprise Institute as a distinguished visiting fellow in the practice of public policy. He is a member of the board of the Fox Corporation and recently moved to Washington. New from Heather Caygles and Jake, the DCCC appears to have narrowed its search for an executive director to 2 candidates, Lucinda Ginn and Brandon Davis, and expects to come to a decision later this week. Ginn is a former VP at Emily's List, and Davis was chief of staff at the DNC in 2016. The House Democrats' campaign committee interviewed 13 people for the position for the open-ed job, more than half of whom were people of color. Happening today, Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley will speak at today's closed-door Senate Democratic Caucus lunch about pressing Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Trump to take up a House-passed background check bill. Good Tuesday morning. Something to keep in mind: the House has 40 days in session between now and the end of the year. Keep that in mind when people talk about all the things Congress might or might not do, including impeachment, between now and 2020. A message from Business Roundtable. As leaders of America's largest companies, Business Roundtable CEOs urge Congress to pass USMCA. The agreement will strengthen America's communities and the industries that help them grow and thrive. Learn more. For Democrats, investigative files. NYT, Trump had deal with Scotland airport that sent flight crews to his resort. By Eric Lipton. Back in 2014, soon after acquiring a golf resort in Scotland, Donald J. Trump entered a partnership with a struggling local airport there to increase air traffic and boost tourism in the region. The next year, as Mr. Trump began running for president, the Pentagon decided to ramp up its use of that same airport to refuel Air Force flights and gave the local airport authority the job of helping to find accommodations for flight crews who had to remain overnight. Those two separate arrangements have now intersected in ways that provide the latest evidence of how Mr. Trump's continued ownership of his business produces regular ethical questions. Documents obtained from Scottish government agencies show that the Trump Organization and Mr. Trump himself played a direct role in setting up an arrangement between the Turnberry Resort and officials at Glasgow Prestwick Airport. The government records, released through Scottish Freedom of Information law, show that the Trump Organization, starting in 2014, entered a partnership with the airport to try to increase private and commercial air traffic to the region. As part of that arrangement, the Trump Organization worked to get Trump Turnberry added to a list of hotels that the airport would routinely send air crews to, even though the Turnberry Resort is 20 miles from the airport, farther away than many other hotels, and has higher advertised prices. NYT Air Force crews have lodged at Trump's Scottish resort at least 4 times. By Natasha Bertrand and Conor O'Brien. Flashback, Feb. 21, 2016, the Scotsman's Martin McLaughlin, SNP, accused of hypocrisy over Prestwick links with Donald Trump. NYT, Commerce Chief threatened firings at NOAA after Trump's Dorian tweets, sources say, by Christopher Flavelle, Lisa Friedman and Peter Baker. The Secretary of Commerce threatened to fire top employees at the federal scientific agency responsible for weather forecasts last Friday after the agency's Birmingham office contradicted President Trump's claim that Hurricane Dorian might hit Alabama, according to 3 people familiar with the discussion. NYT happening today. NOAA Chief Neil Jacobs is due to speak at the National Weather Service's annual meeting in Huntsville, Alabama, which as we all know was devastated by a hurricane last week.
Politico Playbook newsletter. Sign up today to receive the
You can unsubscribe at any time. Going swimmingly. App Seoul. North Korea fires 2 projectiles after offering talks with U.S. The launches and demand for new proposals were apparently aimed at pressuring the United States to make concessions when the North Korea-U.S. talks restart. North Korea is widely believed to want the United States to provide security guarantees and extensive relief from U.S.-led sanctions in return for limited denuclearization steps. APMORE on our former man in Moscow. NYT, CIA. Informant extracted from Russia had sent secrets to U.S. for decades by Julian Barnes, Adam Goldman and David Sanger. Decades ago, the CIA recruited and carefully cultivated a mid-level Russian official who began rapidly advancing through the governmental ranks. Eventually, American spies struck gold. The longtime source landed an influential position that came with access to the highest level of the Kremlin. As American officials began to realize that Russia was trying to sabotage the 2016 presidential election, the informant became one of the CIA's most important and highly protected assets. But when intelligence officials revealed the severity of Russia's election interference with unusual detail later that year, the news media picked up on details about the CIA's Kremlin sources. CIA officials worried about safety made the arduous decision in late 2016 to offer to extract the source from Russia. The situation grew more tense when the informant at first refused, citing family concerns, prompting consternation at CIA. headquarters and sowing doubts among some American counterintelligence officials about the informant's trustworthiness. But the CIA pressed again months later after more media inquiries. This time, the informant agreed. NYTUHH-NBC. Ken Dilanin, a former senior Russian official, is living in the Washington area under U.S. government protection. Current and former government officials tell NBC News. NBC News is withholding the man's name and other key details at the request of U.S. officials, who say reporting the information could endanger his life. Yet the former Russian government official, who had a job with access to secrets, was living openly under his true name. An NBC News correspondent went to the man's house in the Washington area and rang the doorbell. 5 minutes later, 2 young men in an SUV came racing up the street and parked immediately adjacent to the correspondent's car. NBC, a message from Business Roundtable, USMCA should be a top priority for members of Congress to support the millions of Americans who depend on trade with Canada and Mexico. The President's Tuesday, the President will have lunch with VP Mike Pence at 12:30 p.m. At 1:50 p.m., Trump will leave the White House for the Renaissance near the Convention Center. At 2:15 p.m., he is scheduled to address the 2019 National Historically Black Colleges and Universities Week Conference. At 3:05 p.m., he'll head back to the White House, and at 4 p.m., he will meet with Hill Republican leaders. At 5:30 p.m., the President will host a swearing-in ceremony for Kelly Craft, his UN ambassador. Preview of the President's meeting with GOP leaders, Burgess Everett and Marianne Levine. Senate Republican leaders discussed gun legislation in an hour-long party meeting on Monday evening, including expanding background checks, according to an attendee. But no one is making a move without President Donald Trump, who senators expect will be presented options on gun legislation by White House officials later this week. Trump himself has been nearly impossible to pin down on the issue. Top GOP leaders in the House and Senate, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Whip John Thune, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Minority Whip Steve Scalise, will meet with Trump on Tuesday to discuss the fall agenda, according to 3 sources familiar with the meeting. That gives Republicans the opportunity to hear the latest from the president himself. Trump has sounded at times optimistic or non-committal about new gun legislation. With memories of last year's government shutdown fresh in their minds after Trump rejected the spending bill, Senate Republicans have no interest in getting ahead of Trump on such a charged cultural issue. "We are very interested in knowing what his plan and proposal is and what he'd be willing to sign," Thune said, after the party leadership met on Monday. "All of our members, if this meeting, Monday, was any indication, believe that the president needs to indicate what it is he will be for." Politico Playbook reads photo du jour. A Bahamas coroner's team carries a body out of a neighborhood in the Marsh Harbor area of Abaco Island in the Bahamas in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian on Monday, Sept. 9. Fernando Lano, app photo. What the West Wing will be reading, WAPO, for the first time ever, most new working-age hires in the U.S. Are People of Color, by Heather Long and Andrew Van Dam. The surge of minority women getting jobs has helped push the U.S. workforce across a historic threshold. For the first time, most new hires of prime working age 25 to 54 are people of color, according to a Washington Post analysis of data the Labor Department began collecting in the 1970s. Minority hires overtook white hires last year. Women are predominantly driving this trend, which is so powerful that even many women who weren't thinking about working, because they were in school, caring for kids or at home for other reasons, are being lured into employment. According to the Post's analysis, minority women began to pour into the labor market in 2015, and they have begun to reshape the demographics of the U.S. workforce, especially because many white baby boomers have been retiring. There are 5.2 million more people in the United States with jobs than at the end of 2016, and 4.5 million of them are minorities, according to the Post's analysis of Labor Department data. Joaponitz Cheryl Stolberg in Laredo, Texas. In Texas, a lone House Democrat has an A rating from the NRA. He survived in this gun-friendly border city, where Tuesdays are ladies' nights at the shooting range and pistols in hip holsters are a common sight. Representative Henry Cuellar is a proud defender of the Second Amendment, the lone House Democrat from Texas with an A rating from the National Rifle Association. "This is not New York, this is Texas," Mr. Cuellar said in an interview. "So you talk about guns, you talk about God, you talk about trucks, Mr. Cuellar is emblematic of the shift. He voted this year for a House bill expanding background checks for gun buyers, which will almost certainly cost him his NRA rating and the campaign contributions and endorsement that went along with it. Now, he is facing a new reality, a primary challenge from the left. His opponent, Jessica Cisneros, 26, an immigration rights lawyer who once worked as Mr. Cuellar's in turn, is backed by the Justice Democrats, the group that helped elect Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the liberal firebrand from New York. Ms. Cisneros has demanded that Mr. Cuellar give back his NRA contributions, including $6,950 he received for his 2018 race, NYTAJC, off to run for U.S. Senate in Georgia, by Greg Bluestein. The Democrat told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution he would raise a grassroots army unlike any this state has ever seen, by expanding the network of supporters who helped him raise roughly $30 million in a 2017 special election he narrowly lost. The 32-year-old announced his Senate run in tandem with the highest-profile endorsement yet in the contest, U.S. Rep. John Lewis, the Atlanta Democrat and civil rights icon, who said Ossoff sparked a flame that is burning brighter than ever. AJC, a message from Business Roundtable. It's time for Congress to support our communities and American jobs by passing USMCA. CY. Texas Tribune. Texas Senator Pat Fallon exploring primary challenge to Republican U.S. Senator John Cornyn, by Patrick Svitek, State Sen. Pat Fallon, R. Prosper, announced Monday evening he is exploring a primary challenge to U.S. Sen. John Cornyn, potentially giving the state's senior senator his most prominent intra-party opponent yet. Fallon, a former state representative elected to the Texas Senate last year, told a Tea Party group here that he was forming an exploratory committee and moving on a quick timeline, hoping to have a conversation with GOP voters over the next few days. Fallon said that for 6 months, he had been hoping that a viable conservative choice would step up to take on Cornyn, but that person never emerged. Texas Tribune. Boris takes another L. Charlie Cooper in London. Opposition MPs once again thwarted Boris Johnson's attempts to force an early general election before Brexit, voting down his plans for the second time in the space of a week. A government motion calling for a ballot, which would have taken place in mid-October, was defeated because it fell short of the two-thirds majority required to call an early election. 293 voted in favor and 46 against. Politico Europe. London Playbook. Immigration files. Judge blocks Trump restrictions on asylum claims nationwide, by WSJ's Brent Kendall. A Trump administration initiative to curb asylum claims by Central Americans seeking entry into the U.S. was thwarted by a California federal judge, who restored a nationwide injunction that blocks the restrictions from being enforced. U.S. District Judge John S. Tiger in Oakland said in a 14-page order that blocking the rules across the U.S. was the only practical way to proceed while the asylum restrictions are challenged in court. The judge previously ruled that the restrictions were likely unlawful. WSJMEDIWATCH app. 1 American News sues Rachel Maddow for $10 million. A conservative television network sued Rachel Maddow for more than $10 million on Monday for calling it paid Russian propaganda. The small, family-owned network based in San Diego is challenging Fox News for conservative cable and satellite TV viewers and has received favorable tweets from President Donald Trump. The lawsuit contends that Maddow's comment on her July 22 MSNBC show were retaliation after OAN President Charles Herring accused cable television giant Comcast of censorship. The suit contends that Comcast refused to carry the channel because it counters the liberal politics of Comcast's own news channel, MSNBC. App. Chloe Ahrensberg will be Deputy Washington Bureau Chief at NBC News. She previously was a long-time CBS producer in various roles, most recently as a senior producer for CBS This Morning. Tony Matulis is now head of video at GZERO Media and executive producer of GZERO World with Ian Bremmer. He previously was head of video at Yahoo News and producer of CBS Evening News. The NYT announced some Washington staff moves. Julie Hirschfield Davis will be congressional editor, Tom Shanko will edit foreign policy coverage, and Justine McKeely will be day editor. Announcement. PLAYBOOKERS sent tips to Eli Okun and Garrett Ross at Politico Playbook at Politico.com. Welcome to the world. Chelsea Mattingly of Twilio and CNN's Phil Mattingly welcomed Brooke Marie Mattingly on Sunday at 10:38 a.m. From Phil, she's doing great and, at least based on her cries upon arrival, is already feisty enough to put her two older brothers in their respective places. Shira Center, Metro Politics editor for the Boston Globe and Roll alum, and Eli Center, associate director of annual leadership giving at MIT, welcomed Lillian Ruth Center on Sept. 2 at 9:12 p.m. She came in at £7, 14 ounces. Pick another pick. Mark your calendars. This year's Radio and Television Correspondents Association dinner will be at the Anthem on October 24. Spotted Rudy Giuliani at lunch at the Trump Hotel in D.C. on Monday. Spotted at a party Monday night for Jim Mattis' book, Call Sign Chaos, $17.23 on Amazon, hosted by Michael Bloomberg in New York, Martha Stewart, Ray Kelly, Vernon Jordan, Stephanie Ruhle, Richard Haas, Tom Brokaw, Jay Johnson, Tammy Haddad, Jim Cramer and Fran Townsend. Spotted at a reception with United Airlines CEO Oscar Munoz and the airline's board of directors, on the rooftop of 815 Connecticut Avenue NW, John Boehner, Sense. Bill Cassidy, Arla, John Barrasso, RWYO, and Sen. Mark Warner, DVA, Terry McAuliffe, Jay Carney, Steve Clemens, Carrie Budoff-Brown, Walter Isaacson, Neil Wallin, Josh Ernest, Peter Alexander, Dana Bash, Jeff Zients, Josh Bolton, Nick Callio, Bill Shuster, Jeff Nittle, Chaiton Jane, Terry Fariello, Jason Grumet, Paul Smith, Patrick Steele, Irette Iwilla and Michael Finnegan. First in Playbook, Brendan Plack will be SVP of Public Policy and Government Affairs at the NFL. He most recently was COSTA Senate Majority Whip John Thune, RSD. Camille Rivera is joining New Deal Strategies as a partner. She most recently was National Political Director of the Retail, Wholesale and Department Store Union and is an SEIU alum. Transitions. Lizzie Grahams will be press secretary in Alabama for Sen. Doug Jones, DA, re-election campaign. She previously was an account executive at Berlin Rosen. Zach Harmon is rejoining King. He previously was chief of staff to FBI Director Christopher Wray. Patrick Dolan is now deputy director of strategic partnerships at Emerson Collective's Immigration Hub. He previously was Associate Director for State and Local Government Affairs at CAP. Strategic comms firm Abernathy McGregor is launching a Washington office, led by new managing directors Sarah Nakmus, Mike Hotra and Liz Sidoti. Nagmus was most recently at Altria Group, Hotra at PHRM Encidoti at BP. Birthday of the day, Sarah Bernstein, president of Rose Strategies. How she got her start in politics. I started by helping my father, Big T, put up yard signs in his successful bid for the Wyoming State House, followed by introducing Sen. Craig Thomas as he made his statewide announcement for re-election. Then I did what any number of geniuses in Washington do. I answered phones. Playbook plus Q. Cynthia Lummis, RWYO, is 65. Former Representative Ted Poe, R. Texas, is 71. Former Senator John E. Sununu, RNH, is 55. Michael Maroney, SVP at Fleischmann-Hillard. Trey Yingst, Fox News foreign correspondent in Jerusalem, 1776. Co-founder Donna Harris. Bill O'Reilly is 70. Corinne Hort, professor at AU's School of Communication. H.T. Nicole Romano, Soraya Darabi, Deirdre Hackelman, Brian Farnkoff. Charlie Sold is 3-0. CNN's Steve Rusk, Molly Bordenaro. Squarespace's Amanda Cowie is 35. Elissa Bernstein, Paulina Mangabat. Jocelyn Miller Zaitsev of The Atlantic. Gary Polland, Michelle DeSantis. Goldman Sachs. Jack Rivers is 3-0. Lauren DeFranco. Ray Ramsey, Mehan Gunaratna, Communications Director for New Jersey Gov. Phil Murphy. Heather Barber, Andy Levin, Jane Gross, Kimberly Marie Abbott. Derek Hoffrichter, Christina Estrada, CNBC's Hadley Gamble, Barbara Lippert. Oliver Kim. Justin Wiley, Tia Torhorst. Reynolds Arnold, Justin Cooper, H.T.S. Theresa Vilmain, Christopher Steele. A message from Business Roundtable. Passing USMCA should be a top priority for members of Congress to support the millions of American workers and families that rely on trade with Canada and Mexico. Today we have new technologies and industries, but North American trade is stuck in a decades-old agreement. USMCA will strengthen American communities and the industries that help them grow and thrive. That's why Business Roundtable is calling on Congress to pass USMCA. View archives. Correction: an earlier version of this playbook misstated Lucinda Ginn's title. She is a former VP at Emily's List. This article tagged under "Let's Block Ads. Why?"